Vanessa from Crafty Gemini Creates, and I'm back with another fun holiday themed tutorial. You probably guessed it, it's for this really cute Santa hat. Super simple to make. We're providing you with the free PDF download for the template that you need to cut it out, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy this one. So to remember that there's the link in the description box below, and that's where you're going to print out your template. So that's the first thing I want you all to do. The template is going to print out in 3 separate pages, and we have it right here for you. Now we've made it super easy for you by adding these kind of shaded in spots with letters that are marked so you know how to put all the pieces together. First thing I want you to do is just cut out on the outer lines of every single one of your templates. Then you're going to attach A to A and B to B. If you look right here on A, you can see that it's this whole shaded part here, and on my other sample, it has A right here. So you're going to glue these two first. If you don't add A to A first before doing B, you're going to end up with one piece shorter and you're going to think, what's wrong? That's not how it goes. So just remember A, B, just like the alphabet, attach A first, and then it's going to give you this extra piece that you need on B to when you go attach the other B piece, okay? That probably doesn't make too much sense. When you print it out, it will make sense. If you're going to be making out a ton of these, I suggest that you print it out on cardstock or a stiffer paper so that it doesn't, you're able more to manipulate the template and cut it out more times without it getting too wonky on you. So when you put all the pieces together, this is what it looks like. Here's A. You see that we added that extra bit, and we've attached B, and just glue right on the shaded portions and slip it underneath and glue it right together. So you can see this is going to be the template for the hat. Now the fabric that we're using for this is one of my favorites to work on for super soft and cuddly projects like this one. This is Shannon Cuddle fleece. It comes in a variety of colors, and I have 2 different reds here. This is just their red, and this color, the one that I'm wearing right here, is called crimson. Okay, either one will work fine for this project, and you can even make it in a variety of other colors if you wanted to as well. The pom-pom is using the same fabric as well. It's the white cuddle fleece. I think it's called Snow White. And remember that we always include a link in the description box below on where you can find all the materials that we use in my tutorials. So to cut out our template, you're only going to need to cut out 1 per hat, which is really great. I've designed this so that you just cut it on the fold, okay? And what I've done here with my red cuddle fleece is that I folded it in half the same way it comes off the bolt and you order it. So we have our crosswise grain going this way, which is the stretchier part, and that's basically the grain line between selvage to selvage. You can see my selvage is here. Vertically along there is going to be the most stretch, and then the other grain line is the lengthwise grain, and you don't have much stretch this way. So line it up so that you basically have your selvages away from you going horizontally in front of you, and that way you'll know you have everything lined up. We're going to lay our template piece right here. It says cut 1 on fold, so you know that this is the edge that goes right on the fold of your fabric. Very important, otherwise you'll end up cutting 2 separate pieces out. And then you can put some pattern weights or just hold it, and we're going to cut 1 of these out. Now the cuddle fabric comes in like 58-inch width, so even just with a yard, you will be able to make a bunch of these, okay? And then let me scoot this over so I can get to the curved part here. And if you don't have a rotary cutter or you don't feel comfortable using one, you can always just put some pins or some weights and just use your shears, and that will work fine as well. All right, so this is what what it looks like when we end up cutting it out. Now, I usually will just shake it when I cut the cuddle fabric in a wastebasket just to get rid of some of that fluff. You can always vacuum or run a lint roller over your work surface after you're done working with this, but trust me, it's so soft and fluffy. It's a great fabric to work with. All right, so we're going to keep it folded. And you're just going to stitch along this cut edge here to seal it up and kind of give you that conical shape that you want for the hat. So the seam allowance that you want to use when you're sewing with cuddle fleece is generally going to be about 1/2 inch, okay? You can get away with about 3/8 of an inch, but generally I don't recommend like a 1/4 inch. I can do it sometimes like with a walking foot and going really slow, but it's okay because I've accounted for the seam allowances in here to be 1/2 inch. So you can do it with a regular piecing foot, or you can do it with your walking foot, and you're just going to use that 1/2 inch seam allowance and stitch all the way down here, back stitching at the beginning and at the ends, okay? After you do that, let me get rid of this, you're going to end up with something. Let me flip this one back out for you. That looks like this, okay? I use white thread here so you all can see what it looks like, and that's the seam that you sew. Then you're going to flip it right side out and just use something blunt to poke out this corner here, and if you want to, you can always also just trim away a little bit of that seam allowance from there to reduce some of the bulk. That helps sometimes. Okay. The point doesn't have to be too perfect because it's going to be tucked into the pom-pom at the end. So just get out as much as you can of it. So there's our hat. Now for the brim part, we're using the Snow White cuddle fleece. And for that, I cut out a piece that measures 6.5 inches, which is easy to cut with a strip ruler, just like that, and a long strip. If you're cutting it along the width of the fabric, which is how I want you to cut it, because we want the stretch of it to run lengthwise along the strip. Very important. It's going to be going around your head and you definitely want it to stretch. If you cut in the opposite direction, you're not going to have any stretch at all. So keep that in mind. Make sure that you're laying, you're cutting the piece out so that the stretch is going horizontally across the length, the longest part of the strip. So to sew this up, we're going to fold it with the pretty side or the softest side of the cuddle fleece facing up, and I just fold it in half. I'm going to head over to the sewing machine, and using that 1/2 inch seam allowance, we're just going to stitch right here on this short end. Okay. Now for this, if we were piecing something and we were using regular cotton fabric, it would be super easy to just breeze right through it when we're sewing. But because the cuddle fleece is so kind of slippery and it moves on you and it stretches on top of that, you want to put some clips or some pins and kind of stitch it a little bit slower. Otherwise, your fabrics are going to shift, and they probably still will do that. If it does it just by a little bit, you'll still be fine. But you'll see what I mean in a minute. All right. So that worked out nicely. Okay, so just use pins and clips. And now what we're going to do is just open up that seam allowance, and we're going to fold that seam on itself in half. So you can see we started off with a lot wider of a strip, but now you end up with a nice chunky size brim for your Santa hat. So what I like to do at this point, you can go ahead and attach it, but what happens is you're going to be sewing with 3 layers of the cuddle fleece, and there's going to be a lot of movement. So to help keep things a little bit steadier, I will go through here and use my clips again. Clip this all around, matching these top raw edges, and I'm going to baste these 2 layers together so that these 2 will be sewn together. When I go to attach it to the Santa hat, it'll be a lot easier to keep everything matching up nicely. And this helps too, because now this seam that we're going to be basting here is on the stretchiest part, which when we sew it to the Santa hat, I'll show you, you're going to have to stretch it a little bit to get it to go around. But now we're just going to baste right around here. And at this point, you want to make these basting stitches be in a seam that's like less than the 1/2 inch, because we don't want it to show when we sew it into the final project. So I'll just use about 3/8 of an inch or 1/4 inch. That'll work fine. Super easy. We have the brim for our hat now. I want to trip over. Okay, so we have this and this. Now we're going to attach these 2. Really easy to do. First, make sure that your Santa hat is facing, the pretty side is facing out. Then we're going to take our brim here and basically slip it over the bottom part of our Santa hat in a way that the seam on the brim matches the seam that we sewed. So here's my seam on the Santa hat. So match up these seams, okay? And then we can put a clip there. And notice how I slipped the brim over the Santa hat. You slide it up there, but you want to make sure that the raw edges are now touching. And by the raw edges, I mean the one that we just basted on the brim, which are these 2 raw edges here, and the raw edge of your Santa hat. You have to have those 3. So you should see the fold going towards the pointier part of the Santa hat. Very important, because this is going to allow the seams to kind of just get tucked under inside the hat, and you can see on the one I'm wearing, you don't see any raw edges, okay? So we're going to pin all the way around this, or clips, whatever you want to use. And you can already start to see that the Santa hat is a little bit bigger than the brim on the hat. So what you're going to do is stretch this, because it's cut, remember that the stretch is going side to side or around. You're going to stretch it a little bit as you sew this together, and it's okay if you pop some stitches. You'll hear this sound. It pops a little bit. It's okay, because we really just basted them together to hold the layers together. We just want to make sure that it matches and that it goes around smoothly around the entire Santa hat. So I just put some clips, but I'll still go back and stretch it as I work my way around. So now when we sew this together, we are going to use that 1/2 inch seam allowance, okay? So you can see this is bigger here, but I'm going to ease it in as I pull, and I'll show you how to do that at the machine. So I generally start at the seam, back here. If you have a free arm on your machine, that's going to be really helpful because you can just remove your accessory bin and slide this over. This machine doesn't have it, but I'm still able to do it just fine. Line up all your raw edges of the three things, right? Those two doubled up layers of the white and the red. And now I'm going to stitch this up. And I would say after you stitch a few inches, start tugging on the white. You don't want to stretch the red out, just the white, to make it fit to the red fabric. You can see when I come down to the last bit and I just give it a slight pull, everything matches up nicely. There's not that much, so don't pull too much. Come back around to the beginning. I'm going to backstitch a little bit here. All right. So this is done. Now look what happens. When we flip the brim part down, all those seams get tucked in. If you wanted to go back and trim these down or grade them with pinking shears, you can do that as well. But if you tuck it down, everything is hidden nicely. That looks great, huh? All right, so now let's move on to the pom-pom. It's the last thing we have to attach. For that, in your template, you may recall there was a 5-inch circle here. You can trace it out on another sheet of paper and cut it out. This is what it would look like. Now to cut this out, because this is a smaller piece in the template that we were using for the whole part of the hat, this is a tip that you're going to want to keep in mind next time you're using the cuddle fleece to work with small pieces. I've cut a strip of the white here. I'm going to fold it in half so I have my 2 layers because that's what I need, 2 circles like this. And I'm going to lay the circle on top in the center and I'm going to trace it around just like this. With a pen, a marker, it doesn't really matter much because you're just going to use that as your guide for your stitch line. You're not actually going to cut out 2 circles. 2 circles at this size are going to be too small for you to try and match up those raw edges and sew. I mean, the fabric is going to stretch and move all over on you. So this is a way to do it and get them really nice and perfect. So after you trace around the circle and you have the fabric doubled up, I put some pins around the sides to keep everything in place. And then you're going to use the line that you just marked around as your stitch line. So stitch right on that line, on my blue line here that I've done. You're going to leave an opening on one end. It doesn't matter where on the circle, just leave an opening of about 2 inches. Okay, so start on one end, backstitch, and then sew all the way around, stop on the other end and backstitch. Now you also want to shorten your stitch length to do this as well because we're going to stuff this kind of tight and you don't want the stitches to pop on you. So drop your stitch length down and stitch right on it. Here I have my sample that's already been stitched. You can see I have a little opening right here. And all you do now with a pair of scissors or a rotary cutter, just trim it all down, that seam allowance. Shave off the excess. And this is a lot easier way to cut out circles or smaller objects using this cuddle fleece fabric. Okay, so here we have our circle. You probably guessed it. You can trim down the seam allowance even more if you want to, but I find that about a 1/4 inch works fine. Reach in here, flip the whole thing right side out, and now we get to stuff the pom-pom. And what I'm using to stuff my little pom-pom here is the Fairfield's polyfill. And you're going to need a pretty decent chunk. You'd be surprised. This stuff compresses really well. I probably won't use all of this, but the way that I do it when we have small openings is I just grab a bit with my hand and then I will put it as close to the opening as I can, and I really used my thumbs more than any other finger to push it in there. And once it starts opening up and you're stuffing it, it'll be a lot easier to keep adding more fill in there. And so once you get that done to how you want it, it's going to look like this little sample here. Let's grab our hat. And the next step, we're just going to tuck in. I made it real simple for you guys. Tuck in the tip of the hat in here. Now this seam allowance, if you pull it, it will roll, the cuddle fleece fabric rolls to the wrong side. So if you tug on it, it's always going to roll to the inside, which makes it a lot easier. We're going to tuck the tip of this hat in there, and we just kind of fix it up around here. And all you're going to do is whip stitch with a hand sewing needle and some white thread. All right, so let me take a few stitches and show you all how to sew this in place. We're going to put in the little tip of our Santa hat inside the pom-pom, and it doesn't have to be much, an inch or so. And I just have some white thread and a hand sewing needle, and I will bring in the ends. I kind of start from the inside, so my knot in my thread gets hidden inside the project. Then I just kind of pinch it together and just take little whip stitches. Now this cuddle fleece fabric, because it's so fluffy, it doesn't matter how neat or how sloppy your stitches are really. It just eats up the stitches and the thread and you don't see anything. So as long as you know you're going through the layers of fabric and keeping everything in place, the project will be just fine. So you can see I've just done a little corner there, and look, it's already holding it really nicely in place. All right, so once you do that, you can see how nice and neat that looks. Now the pom-pom, because we used the fiber fill in it, it does have some weight to it, and I designed it that way because I kind of like it. It gives you the drape that you want in the hat, and as long as you don't swing your head side to side too hard, it's not going to really hurt. But I think this is a really fun project. I think you guys will enjoy making this. Remember, you can download the free PDF template to make the Santa hat in the description box below, as well as find the link for all the supplies and materials I used in this video. If you enjoyed the tutorial, go ahead and hit it with the thumbs up below, share it across the different social media sites, and don't forget to click the subscribe button so you won't miss out on any of my future videos. Thanks again for watching, and have a good one. I'll see you next time.